Good morning. Today I want to teach the second lecture in a series called The Making of the Monarch. This lecture is going to deal with the splits, the internal splits, some of the primary aspects of the splits and how they work together and to create what's called the inner kaleidoscope. I'm going to show you an example of a double helix system, which is the most common. It's that which is used in the MK Ultras, was used in the original archetypes of the Unix systems of the Monarch, and it has become the basis system for all mind control programming, those that are advanced and designed. To some extent, it's the basis for all mind control programming, period. The formula has been around since the days of Nimrod, and that's because the design was actually given to Nimrod and then to the priests of Egypt by Beelzebub, and it was to fulfill or complete the throne room for the god of this world. Lucifer said, "I will be like the Most High. I will sit in the seat of the north. I will rule," literally be like Christ. So he places his throne inside of the individual. The person's heart will literally be his throne. And the name Lucifer is only used one time in the Bible, in Isaiah 14, and it speaks about when Satan has made his throne in a person. They become illuminated, and at that point he is transformed by conjoining himself to the man, to Lucente or Lucifer, the light, the false light being the Son, not the capital S-U-N, which is Jesus Christ of Malachi, the Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings, but he becomes the pseudo-Christ, or the other Christ, which is the false light. He gets his abilities from God. So I'm going to pray. Father, I do pray and ask that you bless this time, that you bless the minds and hearts that see this, that you'd not let anybody be triggered, that you would protect me and my family. I pray and ask you to also provide for me and my family. And that, Lord, you would use this to help others to be free and for counselors to learn how to set others free. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. I'd like to encourage you to consider giving to this ministry. There should be an icon here, or you can go to my website at SRA /DID freedominchrist.com. I rarely receive any donations. I haven't been able to work since I was poisoned and had my heart operation. I had to have a complete heart rebuild. I'm making these videos to help counselors learn how to deal with people that are SRA-DID or that are a mind-controlled product. Very, very few people know the formula, and the ones that do are the ones putting it into individuals. Counselors all over think they know things, but they actually only know bits and pieces. They don't see the conglomerate or the congruous whole. If there's information out there, it's because they allow you to put it out there. And so hopefully you'll be able to understand this. I've drawn this picture to show you what the schematics of it, what it looks like. I'm about to describe it to you and in detail. In my last lecture, the first one in the series, I told you what a monarch was. Monarch simply means a single ruling entity. It's from the word mon or mono and archus or arche, which means a single ruling entity. It's when a Nephilim or a demon, fallen angel, is inside of an individual and they control the 7 aspects of them: their mind, their body, their soul, their spirit, their will, their intellect, and controls their and their emotions, and controls every aspect of their DNA. They are a complete slave to that entity, and yet because they've never known anything but that entity, and they're given over to that entity because it's joined itself to them at birth, or prior to birth, at conception, since it was done at conception, they've never known anything but being with the entity. And so, as a Christian is led by the Holy Spirit, a monarch is controlled by the unholy Spirit. The monarch begins its journey prior to conception. Now, why is this? Because the mother and the father of a true monarch will have given themselves over Usually it's a family line. I've worked with family lines that date back over 1,000 years in this type, and some that claim to be all the way from the days of Noah. When Ham and his lineage was cursed by Noah, literally the curse of Noah was, let Ham and his descendants be without the grace of God forever, and to be slaves. They felt like there was no hope for them, so they turned to the god of this world, Baal in the Sumerian tongue. And they gave themselves and their descendants over to them for time and eternity. And in turn, they would work together, they would allow them to inhabit them, they would welcome them in, and when the time came for the battle, if they could keep the word of God from becoming true, they believed that they will be given the earth, and that they will rule and reign in hell rather than suffer. So they believe if God can't fulfill one iota or one aspect of the scriptures, then they will have the ability to rule. It's a literal on-staged war that's been ongoing since the days of the flood. And that's why they want to reduce the population of mankind. When they set up the Georgia Stones in 1961, they wanted to reduce the population of mankind to 500 million because they figured that's about what they would need to still be able to maintain their aristocracy and be waited on by the subservient aspect, or the blue bloods. They've reduced that to 350 million now. Jacob Rothschild, in his lecture a year ago, February, when he spoke, he said it was time to begin reducing the world's population, which was the go-ahead that many people had been waiting for. So the monarch begins before the child is ever conceived. It's a family line that has given themselves over to the god of this world. In the Egyptian or Sumerian tongue, it's Typhus, Osiris, and Isis. In the Sumerian tongue, it's Baal, Ashtaroth, and Beelzebub. In the Hebrew, it's Satan, Ashtaroth, and Beelzebub. And so what happens is the parents give themselves over to the god of this world. They're both already inhabited by a fallen angel. And when they come together to conceive, when they come together to conceive, it's often, when it's done outside of a lab, they'll have several sperm donors. They'll have the father, they'll also have his father, so the grandfather, and they will have uncles, relatives that are all sperm donors, people of importance. In this way they can create a chimera, because through ritual magic what they will do is they will inseminate or they'll have sex with the woman, but they will inseminate her or have more than one egg fertilized. They will try to have a minimum of 4 eggs fertilized. Now, this is to create the complete chimera. It's believed that life begins when an egg is fertilized. That's why many of them, the original monarchs, were created through laboratory work in petri dishes, where they would fertilize the eggs and then they placed them together. They would damage one egg so the other would ingest it. And so what happens is you get 4 eggs. And in the high level or designed architecture of the monarchs, they would then take 2 of those eggs and put them in the same petri dish and let them devour. One would devour the other. It's called zygation. And what literally happens is you get twinning or double DNA at that time period. And then they would take, and now you understand that they have given those eggs over to an entity. So each one of those eggs has a spirit attached to it at the moment of conception, the moment the sperm breaks through. And so what it does is the life has begun, and it takes the essence of that life form. And when at the 8-week period, they have the other egg, one egg digested by the other, so you go from 4 to 2, the pain of death of the one is kept in check and maintained by the entity in it. And it merges with the other one, creating a twinning, where you have 2 DNAs. It's coming together. The dominant egg or the dominant DNA will be the one, of course, which will foster the intellect. Now, these 4 will come together when the 2, at the 8-week mark they do that, then at the 12 to 16th week, sometimes they'll wait as long as the 18th week, they'll have the next egg these two eggs brought together to ingest one another. One will ingest the other. And so you have 4 souls, 4 entities that come together. It's important because these will be the 4 ruling entities over the 4 worlds that are created within the individual. Many times they'll have Greco-Roman names or Egyptian names, like Typhus, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Ra. Those are the typical 5 for the Egyptian. In the Greco or the Roman world, you'll find Saturn, Juno, Junus, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Aphrodite, the Sun, the Moon. They're depicted by planets. And the reason is each star was made to represent an angel. Every star that's out there has an angel that it represents. Now, what happens then after the 4 eggs have become one, they've been ingested, is you have what's called the Chimera. Now, the ruling entity will enter in at that time because the 4 different entities create the throne. As in the Bible, it teaches that there are 4 angels that will hold a throne. A throne is a more ranking entity, and it'll take its seat in the center of those. So what happens is that is the work that begins in vitro, or at conception. In the high level, where they do it in the petri dishes, which is what they did in the latter aspect of the 30s all the way up through the late 40s into the early 50s, they would then implant the remaining egg into the woman, and she would carry it to full term. And that egg would be called a chimera because it would have multiple DNAs and supposedly multiple souls, because of the essence that was carried over of the dead one is still contained. That's called hermetic magic. In hermetic magic rituals, they seal the soul of the individual. It's still a type of magic that's used in Haitian voodoo. It comes across from the Book of Thoth, or what we'd call Thothian, Thothite magic. Thoth was one of the primary gods of Egypt. It's from the Corpus Hermeticus, which is the magic book that's the solemn book of all high-level wizardry, Masonic lodge orders, and it's alchemy. For those that are involved in various high-level aspects of any type of the occult, it's a basic book that they will have knowledge of. The Druids and the Druid line have passed it on through the Alwyn since the time of creation. They would be the ones that do it naturally through having several people have sex with the female, each one demonically inspiring the sperm to travel from that individual to a specific egg. And you say, well, how can that be possible? Well, people have twins and triplets all the time. If you read in Exodus chapters 1 through 2, you're going to find out that the Hebrew women literally had 6 to 8 infants at a time. So it's possible to have, I knew a woman that had 6 children, 6 different eggs were fertilized. And it's possible to do that demonically very easily. And so that's what they do, is they will create a multifaceted individual from the beginning. And this is where it's very important, because we get the 4 primary names. That's why when counselors talk about the core, they actually don't have any idea about what they're talking about. It's not a single core. The brain will be broken down into 4 hemispheres. And the 2 hemispheres will be broken into 2, which will create 4 regions out of the 2 main hemispheres of the brain. And like a clock, they'll be able to turn and take the front. And you can have Jonathan, which will be, there's always one male at least, and there's always at least one female in the males. And you'll have each one located at a specific point, separated. Kind of like the wings of a monarch butterfly, how it has the 4 regions. The 2 bigger ones in the back, the 2 shorter ones in the front. This is one of the aspects of where the monarch butterfly does come into play in the anthropomorphic state of Genesis within the individual. And I'm going to show you how that works here in a few moments. What they will do is, if you understand the way the brain develops, the autonomic systems or the life support systems are those that come up from the gastrointestinal. The nerves within the developing infant come from the gastrointestinal, and they open up like this, and they create the peripheral and the central nervous system. And what happens is, as it develops up the spine and into the brainstem, the heart and the lungs develop at the same time, as well as the digestive systems and the vascular systems, the capillary systems, the cardiopulmonary systems all develop, and the lymphatic systems, so that the body's able to begin functioning. That's why you can have a person that's brain dead, but their body's alive, because of the autonomic systems that are located within the brain stem. So what happens is, then while the child is in infancy, after delivery, they will try to disassociate the child as early as possible. The actual birthing is very traumatic, but it's not traumatic enough to cause the type of split that they want. They actually want to have the single life force, which I have represented by this circle right here. That's the infant. The infant will have nothing but pain. If you know anything about the ability to pass out or to turn away from, infants do not have the ability to pass out. They will endure pain, and it'll cause the brain to split, because the frontal and central lobes, central part of the brain, has not developed yet. Neither has the upper rear. So what happens is, at the central fissure point in the brainstem, this is the brainstem, the upper 3/8 of the brainstem is called the brain box. That's where the autonomic system is, but that's also where the programming center will be. That's called the basement. It's the 7th layer of the brain, or the mind. It's called the no conscious. There is no conscious there. There's simply the autonomic systems, and this is where the survival coping mechanism resides. The survival coping mechanism resides there because the number one and the primary duty, obligation, and desire of that brainstem is to survive. It is an innate aspect of it that it cannot change, is the desire and the ability to survive. This is where the will is located. So if you understand, we're going to find different aspects of the individual are located in different areas. This is where the will is located. This is also where the omega programming will be located. Omega programming means the father programming. If somebody is a alpha, for instance, the computer programming of the alpha will be located there. This part of the brain is the computer. The programmer will duplicate themselves in that part of the brain. So that is why when the infant is being programmed from the age of 2 months up, the programmer, usually the father, will hold the head and look into the eyes. The mother will then hurt the baby, and the mother will really hurt the baby. And the programmer will talk to the baby and tell it that he owns it, that its life is in his hands. He will create an image of himself in that baby, in that part of the brain, that will put its commands, dictums. It will memorize and learn of him, and it will duplicate him. And he's going to do this not just from infancy, but it's going to be over the 6-year period, primarily before the end of the first 2 years. The main programmer will duplicate himself in there. He will be in there for the rest of that person's life. And that's why if you ask a monarch, is your father in you? Or they'll tell you, my father's in me. And they can't understand it. It's because he's located himself there. It's the omega, it's the base of the brain where the coping mechanism and the survival mechanism of the brain are located. Now, when they create an alpha is a human computer, it will be linked to the omega programming. It'll be in the storage center in the upper aspect of the brainstem there, and just below the 6th layer of the mind, which is the no conscious. Now, the effulgent top of the central fissure point of the brainstem, that is the actual life force of the individual. That is the actual person that has been born. That's where that life force is located. Now, this is where Babylon will be located. They actually have it's a region called Babylon, and that means the gateway by which Baal will be revealed to the world. This is also the part in the programming. This will be where hell is located. You have earth, you have heaven. Now down here you have hell. This is also where the beast is. There will be a part called the beast, which means living entity. He'll be as black as night. This is the infant. This is the child of the devil. That is also the Nephilim. The Nephilim is joined to that part right there. It is a Nephilim because the angels joined to that part right there. They try to do it right at the 6th month, but it's oftentimes done in the 4th, 5th month when you got somebody that can't wait or is premature or just an ass or stupid because they don't realize the importance. But many times they get carried away. And they will split that baby by creating an intense amount of long, drawn-out pain. One of the primary means by which they do it is they will take a hot poker, and they will spread the anus of the child, and they'll take a hot poker like a wood burner from a wood burning kit, and they will insert it into the anus, and then they will slowly draw a circle or a 6 in it, and then they'll draw 3 6s inside the anus with it. And what happens is it causes this to split. Now that's why this side is lower, because this will be where all the pain is kept. For a female, it will be in the left side. For a male, it'll be in the right side. It'll be the opposite. And so this is where it's going to be the first split. And this is the dark child's region, the child of the devil. It's because all the pain, the hatred, the anguish. Now, while this child is being tortured, the father will, or the programmer will be looking into its eyes, telling him he's God, he rules over it, it's his property, he owns it. If its life is in his hands, he'll repeat these things over and over and over. And that's another reason why they have to wait until it's about 6 months of age, is so that it can comprehend the language. It may not understand the wording, but it understands the intent. And these words that are now being placed into it will be held. And they will take on significance at right about the 2nd year of life, and they'll take on great significance by the 3rd year. So he's putting what's called the Omega template, or the imprint code, in. Though the child doesn't understand the words, the brain is memorizing every word. They will take on significance at the 2nd to 3rd year. That is where the unholy trinity resides, is in this area known as hell. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because there's 3 aspects to create a helix. There's going to be the heaven, the earth, and the hell. Now, they're represented by 3 aspects of the person's being, and as they mature, it will develop. Hell is where the primal genesis is of everything. They're born in hell, in pain. That's where the infant will be, or the son or the daughter. Okay, we're looking at the mother, the maiden, the crone, the father, the son, the daughter, or the father, the son, the grandfather. The mother or the father will be located on earth, which is in the center right here. The earth part will be where the body is. It represents Egypt and how the God of this world, symbolized by the G in the center, will rule and reign through this person. And this God in the center will have the ability to speak to all his minions, his demons, and manipulate and control all the circumstances around this individual's life. The upper part, and that's where the son or the daughter, father or the mother, then heaven up here at the top of the spiral, and this is at the top of the brain. This is where the grandfather, the grandmother, also known as Cronus, Krona, or the hag, will be located. And upon the earth part is where the god Ra, Shimshon or for Samson. The Antichrist is, it'll be some aspect of the false son. He'll rule over that. In heaven is where you'll have the unholy trinity once again, usually known as like the dark Saturn or Satan, Pluto, and but basically it's just Satan, Ashtaroth, and Beelzebub. And they're the same that will be at the very bottom. They're at the bottom, they're at the top. They're over heaven, they're over hell. And in the middle, though, you're going to have the throne actually sitting. That's where the God of this world is going to rule from. Now, that brings us into question about the four entities that were in the beginning, one in each one of the eggs. There are going to be four pyramids located around this throne. Now, this is in each side. There's one major, heaven, earth, and hell. But then in the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, there'll also be a heaven, earth, and hell. Heaven, earth, and hell. These are mirrored. There's a mirror between them. They cannot see each other. They're duplicated. Now what happens is at the 6th-month level, they become split into two parts. And you're going to have the negative aspect and then the positive aspect. The positive aspect will be the child when he comes out of the trance and settles down again. And they're both split from the infant. You have the dark child, the light child. The one of the darkness, the one of the light. One of the day, the one of the night. This one will always dwell in darkness, this one will always dwell in light. Now what they do at this point is this is where the development of the design of the designed intellect comes into play. If it's a female, you're going to have, in the left hemisphere, you're going to have beta and delta programming. If it's a beta or a delta. Beta is a sexual slave. Delta is somebody that works for espionage, assassins, planting information, extracting information, poisoning, that kind of work. On the opposite side, in where the person of light or the person that deals in the day, you'll have Gemetra programming, if it's a Gemetra. Gemetra programming is programming that's designed for disinformation. For instance, most people don't realize it, but if you work for an intelligence organization as a programmer, you have a Gemetra. And they program the programmers. They don't allow them to not be programmed. They just don't know it. Anybody that's properly programmed doesn't know they've been programmed. Gemetra will give you bits of truth with bits of error because they want to give you enough to lead you on and make you think that you have what is real when actually you've only got part of it. I'm the only person I know that truly knows the formula that came out. I tried to put it in a book form, but I could not get the book published. I tried to publish it myself, and when I sent it in to the self-publishing company, they lost 6 chapters. It was repaginated back to 18 chapters, and the 6 that were removed were gone, but they had expanded other chapters to make it look like it was an 18-chapter book. They had lost the original copy. I had it backed up. They lost my backups. I lost my backups. They disappeared out of my house, along with all my notes. I tried three times to unsuccessfully get this published. Gemetra programming will be located within these 4 here. Beta, delta over here. Now this is a picture of the delta helix, and that's the infinite loop that goes around it. In the center here is where the cogs will be. It's up on Earth. These 2 will revolve around Earth. That's why Earth is here. Here's one, here's another. That's just a blow-up of how it works. Now, once they've done the original 2 splits at the infancy point, then they begin working on the dark side. The dark side will be split into 4, this part will be split into 4 more parts. So from this 1, we get 4 more. Mistakenly, that's what people call the core, is one of these 4. They don't realize it's actually not the core. The core is right here. And there is really no core. So what happens is they split 4 primary parts out of the one. That's why it's this one right here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 around it. They create within that the mother, the maiden, and the crone, and heaven, earth, and hell. It's a complete system of 4 pyramids with, it looks like a dreidel, with a compass over the top and a square under the bottom. The square is the pyramid that's facing down. That keeps everything in check from the bottom. The dark one right here in the very center, the nephilim, or the original part, which is birthed as the child and as the beast, keeps everything in check. The compass, which is controlled by heaven, this part, will turn them however it sees fit. Now this is how the kaleidoscope is created. The 4 parts are then split, each one into 12 different parts. I've had counselors say, call me and say, Tom, I have integrated this same part 3 different times. This was a